Hi, everyone. It is Amy with Tabitha from AuthorsBuzz, and today we are talking about what do you do after you're sent your query letter, or like in the midst of it, like I'm querying, now what?
Yeah, it's that in between time, right? Where you're just, you've done all this work and you've gotten your query letter into shape and your manuscript is finished and you have this sort of big sense of accomplishment, right? And then off it goes into the abyss. And to a degree, it feels like you sent it off into the abyss because sometimes you won't hear back from half the people you send it to at all, period, ever, right? And I find that to be a frustrating part of the querying process. If I were an agent, which I'm not, but if I were, I would even send the auto response just so somebody can check it off their list. I find that to be, from a having worked as a professional for many years, that like responding one way or another is just a kindness. But not all of them do. That's just the way it works. And they will say on their thing, if you haven't heard from me in 3 months, it's a no. So then you can kind of go through and, keep track of those. So when I was in the middle of querying, I had a big spreadsheet set up and I had, dates and things and notes and those kinds of notes. Like this one said, if 3 months goes by, it's a no. And then you just keep track. But, waking up every day, because say half of them will not answer you at all, but you know, half of the other half will be giving you rejections, right? Probably more than that. And that's just such a frustrating thing to
Huh. And you know what Query
drive,
Manager does? Like, just for you folks out there who haven't done this yet, you can look at your list there, and then all the way to the left, like as you're looking on your screen, if they responded but they said no, it is this big red unhappy face. Like it could not be worse. Like, and so actually we're both laughing. This whole process, an essential is a sense of humor. Like, you
must
need.
have a sense of humor. You must have a sense of humor because and a bit of a thick skin at this point because there is a piece of this that's truly just a numbers game. You're going to hit a person provided you've got a good, manuscript and provided that you've done the work to make it, put it in the best shape it can be, provided you wrote a good query letter that actually meets the standards of the industry, that sort of thing. All those things aside, let's assume that you did all that and it's a great book and, somebody will want it at some point and readers will want to read it. There's this it's a numbers game. You have to hit that person at the time that's what they're looking for, that's what they think they can sell up the chain, that they didn't see just five more in that genre right before yours that kind of put them off or whatever. So you just really have to keep on it and don't be discouraged. And if you start to get I think we mentioned this last time, but if you start to see a pattern in the responses, because some agents will respond and it will be more than just a form letter, they might give you a tidbit of advice. And if you start to see that bit of advice show up, you may want to go back and revise your query letter or revise the first couple pages of your manuscript. If they're saying, your writing style is great, but this didn't hook me in right from the beginning, you might need maybe you started in the wrong place, and you need your chapter 1 opening scene to be something with a little more punch, not that your writing is poor anymore, but there's many ways that you can make adjustments. And as you go through these batches of sending out and getting replies, and it's not linear, you could send out 25, get 3 responses here, 5 there, none here, but over time, there's kind of like a
Yeah.
response pattern. And you
And
can,
you're probably going to have to send out a lot more than 25.
oh God,
Um,
yes.
I do have a friend in the industry, and she has an agent. She's a YA author. She has an agent. She's been published once. She's about to be published again. Her first round of trying to secure an agent, she told herself she would send it out to 100 agents and then she would stop. She didn't stop. She got a yes on 140. So the reason I'm saying that is, like, to me, that's actually like, okay, like, here's somebody who's finding some success. And it just took that amount of time to get to that person. But if you look at it another way, she could have queried them first, right? Like, so just don't just don't look at it too seriously, I suppose. And then the other thing of, what Tabitha was just talking about, what you were just talking about, do I need a rewrite? I would also say, if you're getting that niggling feeling, like, I'm not sure how I feel about this, or maybe it's time to look at this again, you should.
You should. Yes. It's one of those things. So, because the more that you write and the more experienced you become and the more you go through this process, hopefully you're writing something else while you're querying. Now your stuff's out on submission, you started your new project. Well, each time you do something, you take all the lessons you learned from the first go round and all the edits and the beta readers responses and how you've gone in and zhuzhed up that manuscript, and you're taking it into the next thing you write, and your experience grows. And then that little niggling voice might say, hey, wait a minute, you know what I didn't do in that first one? And I could go back and fix it now before I, send it out again. And do it. If you think you should, for sure.
Right. And you talked about another episode, I believe, or maybe we were just discussing about how your notes from book 2 helped you write book 3 better. Can you talk about that for a sec?
Well, it helped on both sides. I actually had started writing book 2 and was in the middle of editing and updating book 1, and some of the things that I explored there, I was able to go back and add little and this is more from an editorial piece, but I was able to add little better hints, better foreshadowing, because I actually knew where I was going in the next book. And then by the time I was in that middle book, I was actually taking the notes for the third book. That's just sort of like notes for writing a series. But from a craft standpoint, you do get better. Like when I started writing book 2, and I didn't start it in the right place, and my editor
That's what I was talking about, actually.
yes, my editor was like, well, book 1 started with an action scene, a spaceship crash, and it was really exciting. And this one starts with a boring little recap. And I'm like, fine, I will fix the boring little recap. But if I had been pitching that book with my boring little recap as the top, not that you would be pitching a second in the series, but if I had just done all of that info dumping in the first book, if that had stylistically been the choice I made, I don't think it would have gotten the traction, or the interest. So there's just things that you learn as you go that you can then retroactively apply if you have, if you have the inclination or your instinct tells you to do it. So, be writing the next thing for sure, and be writing the next thing so you can remember that you love writing and that there's a creative process to this. Remember, we talked about there's a creative piece and there's the business piece. And the querying, to a degree, is now kind of you're stepping into the business side of the industry where someone is looking at it with, can I sell it? Who's going to want it? Where's the audience? Like, it's a different set of criteria. And so if you can sort of separate that, come back to your creative love and do a new project, you'll also, well, I have this next one on the horizon. I have this next one that I can be, it's really a marathon, not a sprint.
And the other thing, when you were talking about, can I sell it? We've talked about this before. It is a business. Do not take it personally. Look at it as this agent is like building their football team or whatever in terms of what they have, like that they're trying to sell, who they're trying to sell it with. If they have a quarterback that they love, and your book is a quarterback, like they are not going to want your project for the sheer fact that they already have that fit. So if you just lie to yourself constantly, just like tell you, like, to not take it personally,
right.
Instead of saying, oh, they don't like it, just say, oh, they must already have something like it, or whatever it may be, like whatever you have to cheer yourself up with. But on the other note, pay attention if you're getting feedback that it's consistent. And it could be that you do need work. So you've got to be scrupulously honest. And that comes to what you and I both do, beta readers, which we've talked about before, but also writing groups. I know you have a really good writing group. What kind of support do they offer you?
Well, there's the tiny group of people that actually beta read my manuscripts that I trust their judgment. You're one of them, Amy, and, our friend Ron, and I have a couple more people, and I really do trust where they're at in their own process. So when they look at my work, they're giving me good notes, and Ron will call me out on it. He'll be like, there's that habit you have again. Haven't you lost that by book 9? And I'm like, thanks for reminding me. But I do. We have these little habits we fall into or whatever in our draft mode. That's okay. That's why you need people to call it out. I have, a group that I belong to in the state of Rhode Island, it's the Association of Rhode Island Authors. I'm the vice president of the organization. In that bigger group, we have smaller groups that we all write similar things, so we're like genre fiction, sci-fi, fantasy writers. We do Comic-Cons together. But there are also people I can call and be like, I'm having this plot issue with, whatever, or I'm in the midst of doing this thing, and it's just a community, because writing is such a lonely endeavor, that when you're in your own head and you're with your characters, I guess that's not that lonely if you consider them people in your mind, but
I do.
truly, you do, but you kind of know they're not real. So it's lonely.
Sometimes.
I know, right? But you're stuck in your little spot. You're in by yourself. In order to get anything done, you sort of have to be stuck in your little spot all by yourself, or the distractions reign. And you forget that there's a whole group of people out there that are doing what you're doing, and it's fun to talk to them. It's fun to, I talked to Ron a couple weeks ago, and we were like, why do we only talk twice a year? We need to do this, like every other month or something, to remind ourselves, because his project is on submission, my project is on submission, and I'll tell you what, after querying, on submission is just as frustrating and just as nerve-wracking and just as out of your control, right? And rejections are just as devastating, although I did get a couple of, they tend to be, and your agent might not let you see them all. I don't know what kind of relationship people have with their agents, but mine lets me see all the letters. She doesn't just give me the spreadsheet of yeses and nos. She lets me see what people say in response, because she knows I can take it. I'm a big girl about that sort of thing. But one rejection was fabulous. He was like, I love this book. It was a page turner. He's like, I couldn't wait. She's great. This is fabulous. He's like, I just don't think I can sell it up the chain right now with what we have going on. And I was like, well, alrighty then. So I'm not a hack. That's good.
Yeah, it does. It's sort of like bittersweet. You're like,
it's bittersweet. I was like, that was a great rejection. And my agent, like, it was a great rejection. Like, but it's only a great rejection if there's a yes on the horizon. But
yeah,
hey, we're all in it. So
we are all in different phases of it. But I think the commiseration, besides the beta reading, the support is huge. And make sure you also have people around you who support you and are excited about your writing, and that's important too. I mean, how do people around you, whether you have good friends or not, like whether they're supportive.
Right.
And it's like awesome and like horrible. I hate to say this, but it's just like, it's part of it. It is part of it. It's like, if you're not ready for like this kind of life, and you don't have a great sense of humor, and you aren't so passionate about writing that you'll take it all, like, it's kind of like marriage. It's like the vows, like, for better or for worse, like you have
you're in
to
it
about it. You have to have that kind of I don't have a choice-ishness.
I want to say one thing, and I think this is super duper important. Do not respond to rejections. Period.
Yeah.
People do.
People do.
I mean, some of the agents will say, you should see this. My agent should be like, you should see this naughty letter I got back from somebody. I'm like,
really?
Are you kidding me? Because they will talk to each other too, and they're professionals. And if you badmouth somebody, either to themselves or out in the world, nobody likes that. You got to play nice. And I don't think any of our dear viewers are, of the mindset of doing that. But in the heat of the moment, sometimes the urge is there. Like, I have absolutely had the urge to respond to a bad review online and be like, but you can't. It's like, no, you cannot go down there. You be professional,
be gracious, like, even in your mind. And what I say to myself is, they're lost. They're lost. You have to have that.
We weren't a good fit. That's the, that's
I have to say, well, they're losing out on all the money this book is going to make, so it's going to go to somebody who is more worthy of it. And you've got to tell yourself. You really can't. You can't afford to spiral. I mean, actually, you can't afford to spiral. Nevertheless, you will sometimes. I was cutting and pasting for a query letter yesterday, and I happened to see like a later chapter, and I started reading it. I was like, oh my God, is this good or not? Like, I don't know if I like it. Like, I started going down that little swirly bit of, maybe I have to rewrite the whole thing, which I think is probably not true. But you will have those moments where you're like, oh my God, this is all shit. Like, it's just all shit. Like, so
absolutely,
that's normal as well. That is normal as well.
I have that moment like around 25, 30,000 words, I get in, like I'm in it enough and I'm like, oh no, I don't know where I'm going. Oh no, everything I thought is just wrong.
Oh.
And then you get through that and then you go through edits and you're like, I can't imagine how I'm gonna fix this book. I just have no idea how I'm gonna fix what things are wrong with it. And then you start doing it and you're like,
Yeah.
okay. And there's so many moments. And then you read it later and you're like, well, I just was having a really bad, day the other day because I was like, when is my book gonna sell? Why not? Why? It's the end of the year, and I know this is like probably the last chance right now until the new year to hear anything back from anybody, and I'm not hearing back from anybody, and I'm like, oh. So I went back and I read something else I wrote, and I was like, this is bad. I actually can write. And I went online and I read some of my best reviews, all my 5 stars for like all of
Oh,
them.
good, good. That's what we have to do.
I have readers who like me, and I'm not but truly, you both have to have a thick skin, and you also have to be open to the criticism and open to getting better at what you're doing. None of us know all the things, and we can be better every time we pick up our pen or put our fingers to the keyboard, and we want to be. So you need the thick skin, but you also, the defensive posture is probably not one you ever really want to sit in for very long, because it doesn't serve anybody. It won't serve you if you actually let that out into the world, and it won't serve you yourself to be in that place of, it's just negative. Let it go. Like feel the feels, let them go.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. So we did, I think last week we said we were going to talk about small press and hybrid, but we didn't. So we will talk about that next week.
We will talk about that next week.
Thanks, everyone.